We had a very interesting, our team went to dinner last night, had a very interesting conversation, and we want to share some of that with you this morning. I know, thank you. Hello. Money, can we say money? We're going to talk about money. So, there we go. Now I get to change it. So we had a very interesting conversation. I'm going to invite Dion to come up, Dion Benzel, and also Dick Blank. So we were at dinner last night, and we were talking about, we saw lots of, if you look around the room on lots of these plans and some of the things you're thinking about and dreaming about, and the constricting factor is money. And so we were just talking about that over the course of dinner. What are some unique ways that we can access some of that? We have a guest that's been in the room this week that some of you may have met, and others haven't. His name's Dion Benzel, and Dion just recently purchased Catalyst, and has a very unique passion and understanding of funding models. As we talked at dinner last night, he said, one of my pastimes and passions is helping to identify funding models for the church. He said, I think organizations should be about their mission and not have to be focused as much on raising money. And so we just started a very unique conversation last night, and I wanted to have him share a little bit about his Catalyst, the story of how he purchased Catalyst and kind of what was behind that, and then just some other things that we'll talk about over the course of a few minutes here as we get started. Also, Dick Blank, who you've already met, is, as I've mentioned, was an Accenture managing partner with Accenture, and he also is involved with some of these models that we're going to talk a little bit about this morning. So, Dion, just tell us a little bit about Catalyst, how that came about, and how we can learn from that.
Certainly. Good morning. It's been a privilege to be here. I hope you can keep up with my southern accent. You can tell I'm from Atlanta, and we acquired Catalyst beginning of this year. So we're the new owners, and we did it for several reasons. For those of you who know, Catalyst was part of an organization called Giant Impact. There was LeaderCast and Catalyst were the two elements, and really two very different animals and needed to be separated. So I worked with the owner out of Boston. For over a 20-month period, we acquired the company. And so my own background is that I run a private equity firm. I've been in the ministry, was ordained when I was 25. And I've had the schizophrenic life of both ministry and business my entire life. So when it came time to Catalyst, we realized to take Catalyst to do something new and fresh meant new capital, a new capital structure, which meant, we had to make Catalyst a non-profit. So we took Catalyst from being a for-profit company to a non-profit company and turned it into a ministry, which changed its capital structure. So it's not just relying on debt and equity. So the new approach is to grow Catalyst. Last year we had 21,000 attendees at our 10 conferences. This year we want to run 17 conferences, take that to 32,000, and in 5 years we want to get to 100,000 people attending in that fifth year. That's going to take some extraordinary effort and certainly capital. So last night we were talking about this over dinner. And then, of course, our goal after that is to bring something global. So we're going to go from 2 products to 5 products. So we're introducing a lot of new stuff like Catalyst for business, Catalyst education, Catalyst whatever. So we've got a lot of innovative ideas. So, we're really excited to be here and love what you're doing. And so thank you to you all for what you do. We really appreciate you.
So one of the things that came up over dinner last night is we talked about funding, because many of you are already understand or involved with how you engage high capacity givers in your congregations, and you're building into their lives, and you're giving them opportunities to invest in your ministry. Another thing I heard several people say, we understand there's money out there from the foundation, but we haven't been able to figure out how to get to it. And so one of the things that we talked about over dinner last night is there's actually it's kind of a new, different level, different category of giving that I think that at least in the churches I've worked with, I haven't been exposed to their being involved with this kind of understanding what it means to access those kinds of funds in terms of really kingdom kind of investors. And so tell us a little bit about what that looks like, how you see that as being different, kind of a different category of investment than what these churches are typically involved with.
Well, I think we get pitched all the time, and when you're asked to invest in something that's somebody else's vision, it's a tremendous amount of effort to go through and do all the due diligence and really understand what it's about, and are you being a good steward, etc. And it's why it's the grace gift of giving. It takes a lot of grace to give. It sounds easy, you write the check, but what we're really asking somebody to do is take their hard-earned after-tax cash and give it to you. And all the experience, everything they've given their lives to learn to produce those dollars. There's a certain feeling if they're believers, and especially if they're mature believers, they want to do this in a way that's good stewardship. And that takes a tremendous effort. And the one thing they don't have is time. That's their most valuable commodity. And so, you're trying to build a relationship with them. Now, if they're in your church, that's easier. They understand, they know what you're doing. Their families are the beneficiaries of your ministry. So that's a different matter. But if you're going to the bigger givers, it's a much more complex process. So in our world, when we look at investments, for instance, whether it's whatever it is, we use a 10-40-50 principle. 10% is the product, 40% of the people, the management, because money follows people, not products, and 50% is the capital. And that sounds great. And when you tell that to a startup business, or you tell that to an early stage business, and you say, well, we'll give you an hour, come and pitch us on your story. You've got an hour. We're going to use the 10-40-50 principle. That means you've got 6 minutes to talk about the product, 24 minutes to talk about the management team and who's running this, and can you actually pull it off? And if we give you the money, that the money's going to be good with you. And then 30 minutes, talk about the capital. Because here's what givers worry about. You ask me money today, but you're going to be back tomorrow with needing more. How much do you really need? How many rounds of capital is this really going to take? And does this team actually know what they're doing? And what's the exit? You tell me how to put my money in a deal, but you don't tell me how to take my money out. So, all that kind of thing. And you watch the blood drain out of their faces because they got 86 PowerPoint slides on the product, because they think it's 90% product. And I think that's the problem in the church. We think it's 90% about the ministry. And honestly, I think it's really more like 10% about the ministry. It's about how we're transforming society and who's the team that's pulling this. Not the lead guy or the lead woman who's running it is great, but who's the whole team that's doing this? Have you noticed that every time Merit get up here and they put a slideshow up here, they put all their people up there and they tell how many 20, 30 years? Well, we don't do that in the church because we like everyone to know, hey, we've got millennials now, and we've got all these, on our eldership team. In our church, by the way, started as a church plant in my home 17 years ago. We've grown, and now we're in our garage. No, we're we bought a building about 12 years ago, and it's grown since then. But the point is that we love the church, and we struggle with this. We struggle with we want to see consistency and stability. There's some of you been serving in your churches for many years. The investors want to hear that. They want to hear a stable group. Same group who do it. Great, you're bringing in the next generation. It's what Catalyst is very focused on, the next generation of leaders. So it's why I got interested in it, and why I felt that we could really help the local church with that. I know many of your churches here host our events. So again, thank you for what you do. We were last week with a group of your leaders, and it was just extraordinary because they brought up this simple idea, uncommon fellowship, which is our theme for the year. And they brought up this extraordinary idea of what we could do if we did this together. What if we took this fundraising thing to a new level? What if we did this as a group of the 15 churches leading the conversation? So we'll get into that a bit more, but I wanted to say, to put you in the mindset of the person writing the check. It's a very difficult process, especially if they're managing a fund and they have to give account to all there's a whole series of processes and due diligence and stuff they have to go through. It's a big deal for them to go through the process of writing the check. You may know this already, but we just wanted to share some of our point of view from
right. So the other thing I think that you're alluding to there is these organizations that have money that they have to give away every year. And it's easier for them. They'd rather give away if they've got $150 million to give away, they'd rather give away three $50 million gifts as opposed to $150 million gifts, because that's less due diligence that they have to do, right? And so there's some creative ways in which this is happening. Dick, why don't you share a little bit about what you're involved with there in the Dallas area, and share a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Just real quickly, what Deon just mentioned, the challenges. There are folks in your churches who they're not really the typical donor. They're business owners. They're people that are in private equity. They're people that have a different way of thinking about things. And Deon just did a really good job of explaining kind of the mindset and how you want to approach those folks. So some of us had an idea in Dallas. There's roughly 200 foundations in Dallas, and the vast majority of those are run, owned by Christians. And so we decided to get them together for a quarterly breakfast, and we created a membership approach for that, and included the spouses as well. And we set it up as almost like a Shark Tank type format, and we hired somebody to run it for us, and they have timed presentations. They're like they're TED-like presentations. They have 14 minutes, so less than the hour. They have 14 minutes to make their case. And these ministries, it's all ministry oriented, and so Christian business leaders every quarter listen to, over a breakfast, up to 5 ministry presentations, 14 minutes each, make their case, and then they are invested in. And the Christian business leaders in the room are both religious investors and social investors. And the return they're thinking about is essentially just eternal returns. But the point being is these networks exist, I think, in many cities around the country. We've organized it in Dallas. And, just in the last 18 months, it's about 18 months old, over $100 million in capital has been invested in various projects that have been involved. So, but there's a different way to approach these folks. And to Deon's point, they don't have a lot of time, and you have to be very sensitive to the kinds of things they want to listen to.
Yeah, so some learning there, I think, just in terms of for you, in terms of as you approach investors. But the bigger picture that we want to kind of begin to paint a picture around is, what would it look like if the 15 churches that are in this room shaped a 500 million or a whatever the number is vision, and began to put together what a private equity group might look like to begin to attract some of that kind of money. And Deon, I'm going to put words into his mouth a little bit, but I think he would help us to begin to figure out how to do that and how to begin to map that out. So we wanted just to kind of lay that out a little bit here at the front end. I know that's we've talked a lot about the challenges of dollars. I think there's some great insight that hopefully you've received here from Deon, and we would, if you're in, we want to begin the conversation about trying to figure out. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Deon?
Sure.
You probably just were saying investor language, and I misunderstood.
Yeah.
You mentioned even as a Christian, you wanted to figure out how to get your money in and get it back out. I assume that you weren't talking about getting back out of the ministry in dollars.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying. Yes, exactly. So, we want to know what's the return on the equity.
Yeah. So just a follow-up question.
Sure.
So a lot of our high-capacity donors that we interface with talk in these terms of investment.
Right.
And we have this consistent dialogue about it's easy for a parachurch ministry to talk about intervention giving.
Right.
The fact that there's a crisis and you can solve a problem right now and there's a very difficult need.
Right.
The more difficult vision for us to cast, and we talk about a lot how to do it, is prevention giving. In other words, kids that go through our children's programs and go through our student programs have a demonstrably better future, but we can't prove it like you can when there's a hurricane or a landslide. Because it's what might have happen to these kids if they didn't have these relationships that we have. Do you have any insights as an investor how we can better paint a picture for that for people that want to invest in our ministry?
I mean, that's the heart of the issue, right? What are the metrics? How do you come up with the metrics to show what the return on giving to a church would be, in fact, we were talking to Andy about this on Friday, and I was asking this question because we're coming up with a model right now to talk about how do we manage or measure influence, right? So I think maybe if I make it three quick points on this since we're out of time, but the first one is investors in general is that they do want to understand return, but they also they remember they're not investing so much in the product as they're investing in the people. That's why I told you the 10, 40, 50. The capital is there, but the 40% is where is it going, who's driving this, and are they likely to be stable in the long term, and is this a legacy or a system that will keep going? The second thing is most investors don't want to be the only investor. They necessarily don't want to be the first investor, and they don't necessarily want to be the biggest investor. So if you put a fund idea together, then that means that they're now sharing this. The reason why I think Dick's idea works so well is because now I've got 5 people I can talk to about the idea. We can process this very quickly. It's very efficient, and then there's some sort of diversification. So so the question is, if you want to solve the problem, is think about it in the big picture, right? We've got the church in America. So here's the crisis. The church in America is closing. Churches are closing at the fastest rate in American history, right? We know that. At the same time, some of the most innovative, creative stuff represented in this room, I think, is emerging. So how do we fix the crisis of church in America? So the issue, that's the problem. And that's easier said together than apart. That's harder to make the case that we are the only church who are going to do this, as opposed to we're part of a new brand of churches. So who's defining the global conversation? I suspect that 15 churches in this room, plus maybe some others, make up that, are really defining this new conversation. And so the next thing is, now we've got diversification of risk from a portfolio point of view, because now we've got 15 efforts going on, plus their teams, plus the next generation of leaders being trained behind that. So to the very specific answer to your question is, we are working on a model right now to try to come up with some key assumptions. So it's not so much about getting the number right as it is explaining the level of influence. And then we tend to only think of it in our generation. But what's the effect of what we're doing 10 generations from now, right? I mean, it's extraordinary to think of the families we're changing, the lives we're changing, and we're changing life in America. And so that's what's at stake. And I think it's harder to make that case when you're talking about the Christian life in Atlanta versus America. So I think the problem is that you scale the size of the solution to the size of the problem. And I think that what we're all trying to do is we're all trying to be a local solution to a global problem. And what we were proposing last night is, what if we came up with a global solution to a global problem? What if we put a $500 million fund together and said, these are the 15 churches that are defining the conversation in the country right now, or in the world. And there's some churches that have done this global thing even better, right? And so the issue would be, can we put a fund together? And now when I'm committing to that, the level of due diligence involved, et cetera, is so much easier. Because now I'm part of a much bigger group. Now my $10 million or $30 million or $50 million is only a small portion of a big group. And I think we also have to surround it then with a level, you have to involve National Christian Foundation, PricewaterhouseCoopers to do it's got to be of that caliber. And I think you've got to bring in global players to solve the global problem and position this globally. I think that's how you take this giving to the next level, because I think you've all spoken to all the wealthy people in your church, and you do a good job of involving them and including them and giving them opportunity to give. The question is, how do you take giving to the next level? That was the conversation last night.
So that's what we're working on. And we'll be, after the dinner last night, Dion said, "Did you sleep much last night?" And I said, "No, I didn't." So we already began to kind of dream and envision what this thing might look like. And so we'll be following up with that post our time together here and begin to see what that might look like. And I think Dion and Dick will both actually help us to frame some of that out and be able to bring some of that back to this group of churches and see what we might be able to do together.